What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to give you guys a very quick update on SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and break down what's happening for next week. I'm going to talk about some important economic data that's coming out, not to mention what the charts are suggesting. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. The offer ends very soon in just a couple of weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So looking at SPY, we have a very nice range right here. We're getting bought back up around this 602 to 603 area, going back and forth and back and forth. And once again, as we hit the 608 zone, very close to 608, we tend to reject. So we're just going back and forth, at least so far, between these ranges, excuse me. But the thing is, SPY is currently just barely holding support around our 50 EMA. So I'm going to be watching to see if we hold the support going into next week. And if we don't, there's going to be a risk of us dipping a little bit lower. Now, even if we dip lower, that does not mean the market's going to turn into like perma bear mode. The market's going to crash or anything like that. It could just be a minor pullback before we see even more upside later on, right? And that's completely normal. It's nothing that should surprise you guys whatsoever. Like, for example, let me give you the perfect example of this. The epitome of this was right over here. If you guys look at what the market was doing, we were holding up near 600, right, on November 14th. Then we got this little sell-off. It lasted just a couple of days up until like November 19th. So like a 1 week sell-off, from this period right here. If you count from this period, it's about 2 weeks. So 1 to 2 weeks of selling right here. Then we just continued our rally, right? And that just goes to show how these pullbacks could last. Sometimes it's 1 week, sometimes it's about 2 weeks. This little dip has been lasting for about the last couple of days. If this lasts for 1 more week and we do end up grabbing liquidity down here, we could just be setting ourselves up for a big bounce for the end of the year. And there could be a catalyst that could cause that. I'm going to talk about what that could be and what's going on. So the market was more red today. We saw a lot of tech stocks like Nvidia, like Microsoft and Google all selling off, whereas stocks like Tesla were very strong, very resilient. And that's no surprise. Tesla had some good news that came out nonetheless. Now, for the market, just know this, okay? Going into next week on Monday, we have some PMI data coming out. That's going to be more significant, might cause some volatility. Besides that, going into Tuesday, I would say the data is not as serious. We just have some manufacturing numbers. And then things become very serious on Wednesday, December 18th, because that's when we have the big FOMC meeting, which Jerome Powell giving his speech and the Fed announcing what they're doing with interest rates. So watch that very carefully. Expect some volatility on Wednesday. If the market sells off more, when we just continue to dump and dump, just hypothetically, right? If that happens on Monday and Tuesday, going into FOMC, that could cause a pivot and the market could bounce. Typically, they use these events as catalysts to switch directions. Sometimes that happens. So I'll be paying very close attention to what the market's doing approaching FOMC and what the reaction is. And then for Thursday, we have very important PCE data reports coming out. PCE is going to be another important inflationary measure, followed by Friday, giving us even more data when it comes to Michigan consumer sentiment and factors like that. So I'll be listening to all of this. We have even more PCE data on Friday, and then we have the Michigan consumer sentiment data. So lots of data is coming out, at least for the week, almost every single day. So it's a heavy data week, and we'll see what happens going into Wednesday through Friday. Now, for the overall data, just know that going into next Friday, the market has a 2.27 put to call ratio. Notice that the put to call ratio is very low today. The market sold off. Going into next week, it's a little bit higher. So we'll see what that leads to. Max Payne's pretty low, but it is what it is. We'll have to give the market time to develop because the market makers do love to manipulate. For earnings, it's very minor. There's nothing too serious. Lots of retail. We just have like FedEx and Nike announcing earnings. For the most part, there's not really much coming out. And then for the overall sentiment in the market, greed is not really as strong, nor is fear. We're just in the middle right now at neutral. The market's very neutral, waiting for a big move. Momentum is slowing down. It's still at greed, but like I said before, if we do dip a little bit more and this does get closer to neutral, there could still be a bounce coming. This could just be a minor pullback. The put to call option ratio is going up just a little bit, which is showing there's a little bit more put buying that's happening. So more people are starting to short the markets. This could slow things down a bit. And then the volatility is at neutral. This is stuck in the middle as well. So what do I see for next week? What is my prediction? Well, honestly, guys, as of right now, okay, the market is range bound, right? We like to once again bounce off the 602 to 603 area on SPY, and we like to reject off 608 or very close to 608. So notice we're just stuck in this range. There is one concern I do have, though, and that's the fact that SPY had a high at 609, got a big rejection, got bought back up to about 608, got a rejection, came back up to 607, got a rejection. So we're making lower highs right now. And we haven't been making lower lows. If anything, we're just getting tighter. But the structure is forming kind of like a double top, which could suggest the possibility of us dipping. I expect us to push a little bit upon open on Monday. And if the move fails, again, if we don't break these highs, this could signify a little bit of a dip that's coming heading into like FOMC or maybe like after that. But then this could just be a temporary dip, right? A temporary dip that could be coming. There's no confirmation of it yet unless we lose 602. We did close very close to that area, so I do see some weakness here. But it's very possible we do attempt to rebound only to pivot back down. If we lose 602, we could be tipping even lower, by the way, all the way down towards like the 590 area, 598. That's going to be the first level to be watching for. And if we do end up testing that and see a small pullback, it could just be a buying opportunity for an end of the year squeeze. So I wouldn't turn way too bearish. If anything, this kind of resembles like this setup right over here, right? Where SPY had this high here, similar to how SPY had a high here. It came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, just like this. And if we get that some kind of sell-off early next week, it could just be followed by a big rally afterwards. So that's what could be setting up. But we don't know for sure. We have to wait and see if we lose 602 for confirmation. I anticipate a bounce on Monday, but then we'll see if the market turns and eventually gets that pivot. For ES, it's the same thing. It's looking a little bit weak here. We're barely holding 60-40. If we do dip a little bit more, that would be completely healthy. It does look a little bit weaker, at least technically speaking. And if we do get some kind of rebound, if we reject off our EMAs again, so if we hit the EMAs at our 50 around that 60-66 area, we could reject and start dipping lower towards our next imbalances, taking us down to 60-20. I would like to see that because it could be setting us up for a big run for the end of the year. It's always a possibility. Nvidia looks weaker. We're rejecting over and over again, but we're technically just range bound. We like to get bought back up around 131, and we like to reject off the 145 area. So we're just going back and forth and back and forth. We'll have to see the support at 131 to see if we bounce off that. So look for a little bit of a dip, and we'll see if we bounce. And then if we do rebound off this imbalance, we could be making a lower high before it rejects again. So watch and see if that ends up being the case. For Bitcoin, we are testing resistance. It's showing some strength, so this could attempt to rebound off the inverse head and shoulders. So it could be an attempt to get up to about the 102,000 plus area next week. But then once we hit that resistance, we could turn back down. So just keep that in mind. On the other hand, Tesla remains very, very strong and very bullish. We start off with the dip we were consolidating. Then at the very end of the day, this thing just rocketed right back up. So Tesla, it could pull back, retest 430, and then as long as we hold that, we could bounce and continue to push into the 440s. We look more bullish to me. Look for a small dip before it continues, but it looks quite strong so far. The NASDAQ and QQQ look pretty strong. We might look for a retest of 21,692, and we'll see if we bounce. If we bounce off that on NQ. If not, it could be like 21,537. So somewhere in this range, we might kind of dip right here before we try to rebound. So look for a small dip going into next week. We'll see if NQ bounces there. Same thing with the QQQ. It might retest 526.5 before it tries to bounce. If that doesn't hold, it could be dipping a little bit more before we get that bounce. So watch for that very closely. Apple might retest 246 before it attempts to rebound. If not, 244 could be coming. I do see a little bit of weakness building on it, so we'll see how it goes. I'm not going to talk about all the tickers in today's video, by the way, guys. I'll be talking more about them on Sunday. For now, I'm just going to make this video a lot shorter. The Russell looks a little bit weaker. We might be revisiting our 200 EMA around 231, so there could be a little bit more downside coming before it attempts to bounce. Coinbase could be dipping lower. We could be looking for an attempt to get back down to 305 or so before it tries to bounce. So it could be a rejection here. We could be dipping closer to 305. Amazon is rejecting. We'll have to look for 226. If this fails us, I guess we could be looking for this imbalance down here around 225. So this 225 to 226 area, we'll have to see if we bounce off that. We could dip a little bit lower, but then we'll see what kind of reaction we get. For Meta's hitting this resistance. We could be dipping a little bit lower towards like the 615 area, and we'll see if we bounce off that or not. For Microsoft, we're looking for 446. If that fails us, it is possible we dip to about 443. Then we'll see what kind of reaction we get. This kind of resembles like a left shoulder, head, and right shoulder. So it depends on if 446 holds. If not, 443 could be coming before it tries to bounce. And last but not least, we have Google. Google might dip closer to 189 before it tries to rebound, which could slow down tech. So be careful. Might be a little bit more downside coming. The VIX is just holding support right now. We'll see if this breaks out higher, but it's not really doing much. We have to give this more time. I think the market will attempt to bounce a little bit on Monday, and then we'll see if we get a rejection or not. If we do kind of rebound towards our 20 EMA and then reject, because we are making lower highs so far on SPY, which makes me think that this could pull back a little bit. And if we get the pullback, I'm not going to panic at all. If anything, I'll just be watching to see where this thing tries to base, because we have a lot of catalysts such as FOMC that could turn the market right back up. So it could just be a temporary dip before an end of the year Santa rally that could be coming. That's a very, very strong possibility. And we'll be watching these levels very closely. But for now, we haven't officially lost support to see this dip, so don't expect to just dip instantly. Watch and see a rebound, and maybe if we reject and lose support, watch for confirmation first. Then we'll see how things end up going. I might release another video tomorrow and give you guys a better, longer term view of what the market's going to likely be doing, and then we'll have to see what happens from there. Anyways, I thank you all so much for listening. I really appreciate you guys so much for listening. So please have a good rest of your day, and peace out.